neighbors and friends can meet candidates for insightful conversations. We've done these meet the candidate events for a number of different races. Tonight we're hosting two candidates for Edina City Council, Carolyn Jackson, who is going to start us off this evening, and then James Pierce. So the candidate's going to join us at 7 o'clock. So this is the first night of our candidates. We will be hosting Janet Katui and Ukasha Dekani on September 9th and scheduling a night for the remaining candidates. While we will start with prepared questions that all the other candidates will get, feel free to add your questions in the chat and we'll try to work them in. If we don't get to them, we'll share Carolyn and James's website and email information at the end of this conversation. You can follow up with them directly. So once again, I'm Sue Scott. I'm one of the volunteers of the Edina Indivisible, and I'm the moderator for tonight's Zoom event. We are live streaming this event on our Edina Indivisible Facebook page, as well as recording it for later viewing. Edina Indivisible is a grassroots group committed to encouraging civic engagement in our community and holding representatives accountable for passing progressive and inclusive policies on the local and national level. Thank you, viewers, for joining us, and thank you, Carolyn, for talking with us tonight. Let's get started.
Well, thank you so much, Sue, and thank you, Indivisible. This is a wonderful opportunity to get to talk with our neighbors. I'm Carolyn Jackson. I'm running for Edina City Council. Our family moved to Edina in 2000, so we've been here just over 20 years now. And we moved here for the great schools, the beautiful parks, and the strong sense of community. And it has not disappointed us. We have loved living here. We raised 2 children through the Edina Public Schools. I've been a community volunteer in a lot of different ways. I was PTO president at Countryside School. I was chairman of the site council at Valley View Middle School. I'm currently vice president of the Edina Community Foundation, membership chair for the Edina Morningside Rotary Club, and chair, well, I guess now I'm vice chair because I handed my responsibilities over last month, but I was chair of the Energy and Environment Commission for the city of Edina. Cities are very important to me, and I just find them fascinating. They're democracy at the most basic level, and one of the last ones that actually works. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I started out my career as a municipal finance attorney. I wanted to build roads and bridges and schools. I also was an advocate for cities, for transportation funding, for property taxes, and for economic development. I was an advocate for the ACLU of Minnesota, where I advocated for criminal justice reform and for voting rights, among other things. So how government works when it goes well, what happens when it doesn't go well, these are all things that I've dedicated my adult life to. And I'm really excited. I think the city of Edina is a fantastic city. I've lived all over the country, lived in big cities, I've lived in little cities, I've lived in medium-sized cities, and I think Edina is just someplace really special. This election is going to be about a lot of things, but one of the things that's happening right now is our city is facing change from the outside. So it's change that we really don't have a lot of control over. One is climate change. It's going to happen whether we act or not, and we have to react to it, and we have to do our part to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but also to adapt to warmer, wetter weather here in Minnesota. We're facing population change. Across the country, populations are moving into metro areas because that's where the jobs are. The Twin Cities metropolitan area is no exception. The Met Council thinks we're going to, estimates we're going to have 500,000 people join in the next 20 years. We've seen lots of population growth over the last 10 years, and we're going to continue to see more. The population is also becoming more diverse, more ethnically and racially diverse. And so these are changes that are happening outside us. And then, of course, this year we got hit with COVID-19 and what that's going to mean for our economics, especially things like retail and commercial office space, which are the economic engines of our city. We don't know yet, and it's going to test us in many different ways. And it's going to take quite a bit of work to manage all of this change. One of the things that I've learned in observing the city council and working with them through the commissions is that being a city council member takes a lot of patience. And so one of the things that I hope that you'll consider as you look at different candidates is the temperament of people who are running for city council. I think I talk to Kevin Staunton quite frequently, both about city stuff and Rotary stuff and various other things. And it always strikes me the amount of patience this man has and the amount of patience his job requires. And it isn't that people are bad or anything, but when something happens in the city, it impacts your home. It hits literally hits close to home, and it's very emotional. And so when people are interacting with the city, they're interacting with changes that are very, very near and dear to them. And it requires a lot of patience to hear what they're saying and to get the conversation going. And what I know about managing change is it requires a couple of different things. One is identifying values that we want to protect. The other thing is making sure that all the people who are going to be affecting this change and managing the change have buy-in to the plan that's going to go with it. So we want to protect our values, and we want to have buy-in from the stakeholders. All that's going to take a tremendous amount of patience. It's going to take a lot of communication. So when I'm out talking, I've been out lit dropping across the city. And when I talk to people like, well, why are you running? Like, well, I'm running for our two basic issues. One is to continue to increase communication between the city and the residents, have all of our work be outward facing. It's a public entity. We want to engage the public. The second thing is to put sustainability first. When we look at sustainability, at the beginning of the issue or of a decision, we can save money. When we look at the end, it costs money. So I want to make sure that we're doing sustainability first. So that's my basic speech, but I want to share with you a couple of questions to give you a flavor of what I talk about when it's going to take patience and thoughtfulness to the next city council member. A friend of one of my supporters sent me an email yesterday. And he asked, what are we going to do about waste collection, where we have so many different trucks going up and down the streets? He said, what are we going to do to reduce road and sewer costs, road replacement costs? And it's so expensive now. What are we going to do about that? What happened to the Braemar master plan for the Braemar Park? And why aren't we building the trails there? And then finally, how do we preserve smaller affordable homes? Well, I'll show you the email. This is the response that I wrote. Each one of these issues is incredibly complicated and requires a tremendous amount of input and back and forth between the city and the residents. I can answer all those questions for you, but the basic answer is it's complicated. Let's listen and make sure we preserve our values. But those are the kinds of questions that the next city council is going to have to face. It's going to take a lot of public hearings. We want to work on a climate action plan. Again, more public hearings. We're looking at race and equity and how can we affect racial justice in our city. Again, more public input. And then the economic changes that we're all facing and the mental health issues from COVID-19. So there's a lot going on. I love meeting people in Edina. I love the city. I've been out looking, like I said, lit dropping and talking to people as they're out in their yards. And there's just, every neighborhood is wonderful in its own way. And I've met so many friendly people. So I really hope that you will vote for me and support me, because this is a job that I would really enjoy doing. And I would love to be able to serve my wonderful neighbors.
Thank you, Carolyn. You have covered a fair amount of territory in the questions I have coming up for you, which is great. So in a field of strong candidates with such diverse backgrounds, why are you running for city council, and what makes you different?
Well, I think that my resume of community involvement is probably a lot deeper than the other candidates who are running. I have lived here for 20 years. And I've been a community leader on a lot of different levels. I only give you the highlights of my volunteer engagement. There's more to it. It's boring after a while. But the thing that I noticed I've been doing a lot of writing, and I don't like to write about myself, but of course you have to. And one of the things that I realized as I'm going through this is that when I join an organization, I often end up leading it. And that's not because I'm ambitious. It's not because I have an agenda, but because people have asked me to. And I think that I'm very honored by that. And I've been asked to lead things by some really special people for some special organizations. And like I said, that's a big honor, but I want you to think about that in terms of people have asked me to run for city council, both present and past city council members, present and past legislators. They've asked me to step up and run. And that's something that I am extremely humbled and honored by.
Carolyn, could you describe for us things that you think that the current board members are doing well? And then what are the top 2 things you would advocate for to improve the city? There are lots of issues. What's at the top of your list?
You bet, you bet. Well, one thing that I want to say is right now there's an exceptionally professional city council, and they're all 5 very different individuals, but they approach their work on the city council both with a high degree of professionalism. They also care very deeply about this community. They listen to community members. I've sat down and talked with all of them about various city issues and found them to be thoughtful, respectful, and hardworking. This takes a lot of work. And I think we have a very good crew right now in that respect, that they all come from a place of loving this city, and they treat the public respectfully, which is just fantastic. The 2 things that I really want to see is, again, better communication. There have been every time there's something that comes up where there's a big crowd in the city council chambers, it's oftentimes because people are surprised. And I want to try to find ways to mitigate that surprise. And there are complaints that, oh, they've made up their decision beforehand. I want these public hearings to mean something. I want people to feel like, oh, this is my opportunity to come in and give my input. I haven't missed anything. This is the day for me to come in and talk. One thing that's happened with these remote public city council meetings is they've extended the period of the public hearing for 10 days afterwards to take comments online. And I love that. So you don't have the sense that the decision is made ahead of time. It extends out the amount of time that we can take in comments from people, and to sort of let arguments settle a little bit and think about where everybody's coming from. So I think that will help with the communications. I also am very pleased the city put together this Better Together website. I'd like to see at the end of every city council meeting, city council members give comments about things that they've seen in the community. I'd love to see them put those comments down as sort of a blog on Better Together, so that if you miss a city council meeting, you can hear what people are thinking and issues that are coming up, and start to prepare your opinions on that. You know, what do I think about sidewalks that are also a bike trail in my neighborhood? So that's the first thing. The second thing, of course, as I mentioned, is sustainability. We really are going to see warmer, wetter weather. That means in Edina, flooding. We're looking at Morningside right now. If any of you live in Morningside, Nassim, do you live in Morningside? I don't remember. But they're having a series of public hearings. Nassim, do you live in Morningside?
I do, yep. I'm in the heart of it.
Yeah, have you heard about these hearings that they're having about water, stormwater management? So anyways, in Morningside, this is the first neighborhood where we're going to do some managing of stormwater, and they're really doing a good job of reaching out to the neighborhood to try and get a sense of, as we manage the stormwater, what do we want to do to make sure that we preserve the nature of the neighborhood. But it's going to be expensive. Again, we have blue-green algae in Lake Cornelia. That's going to be expensive. And so we're going to have some hard talks about how do we protect our environment here, and how do we lower our greenhouse gas emissions, because we have climate change happening, and it's really going to take everybody in an effort worldwide to affect this, and we have the power to make a difference. And I want to see that happen here. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
Well, no, but you're telling us what your priorities are, and they're big issues. So, but as you well know, one of the hot button issues in Edina is development and growth. So share with us your ideas for balancing the city's enviously high rank and livability while we bring Edina into the future.
Yeah. So we just went through a 4-year process, almost 4 years, of creating a new comprehensive plan. And the old comprehensive plan was adequate and everything, but it did not have a lot of predictability. This one really looked hard at what are we going to do to manage growth and development in this city, especially in our business areas. So there were, I want to say, 6 small area plans, and they each had a whole series of public hearings and strong discussions from the stakeholders in the neighborhood of these are areas where growth will happen. What do we want to do to preserve the feeling of the neighborhood, but to also allow us to have some growth? Because like I said, population growth is happening whether we like it or not, and we're going to have to manage it rather than just sort of bury our heads in the sand. The other thing that's great about that is that when we manage it, we can look at sustainability and how can we reduce the amount of trips that people have to take. Can we increase walking and biking? Are buildings situated in a way where they are the most energy efficient? What are we doing with stormwater runoff? So when we have this planned ahead of time, we have some control over some of these things that we really value deeply. I've been looking at the Southdale area plan. There are 2 big projects that are coming up now. One is just south of Port-au-France at 6400 France, where the Edina Realty offices are. The other is the 70th and France US Bank building. They just announced yesterday that there's a new developer on that project, and they are looking to go forward. And so I've been spending a lot of time with the Southdale area. I have to get the experienced design guide. And this is really important so that development's going to happen, but let's make sure it happens on a human scale, where we encouraging walking, we encourage light and air and water elements, so that we don't have this overpowering sense of these big bulky buildings that are anti-human and just really imposing. If you go down to Centennial Lakes and walk around, that's kind of development that really drove the feeling that we want to get through the Southdale area experience design guide. And you can sense there are apartment buildings, there are offices, but it's also beautiful. It's walkable, it's green, there's water. That's the kind of development that is envisioned in the comprehensive plan. And I will certainly work to make sure that our development going forward does keep that human scale, encourage walking and environmental sustainability.
Great. Carolyn, share with us your perspective on the value and the challenges of diversity in Edina, be that racial, ethnic, socioeconomic diversity.
Yeah. So there are lots of different levels to that question. So looking at just a cultural level, I spent today working on a committee that I formed with a community foundation looking at racial justice and equity. And we're looking at sort of telling the story of what it's like to be Black in Edina, how we can make this a welcoming place, and the strength that we have through our racial diversity. And so the community things, and how we can all learn to grow as we grow more diverse, and to address historic wrongs. So there's the cultural element to it, and the city is leading that through the Human Rights and Relations Commission, and really taking a look at policing, but also other things that are history, and how we can grow as a community into a more racially just community. Then there's also sort of the land use, right? And that is very important to look at affordable housing. That sadly in this country, when you look at economics, you're also looking at race. And it's not true that all Black people are poor and all white people are wealthy, but it's certainly the wealth does track, it's racially disparate. There are racial disparities in our wealth. And so as we create new opportunities for affordable housing to be built in our city, we also create opportunities for better racial diversity. So we have the cultural issue, we have housing issue. We want to make sure that we continue to support our schools so that they have the ability to invite in kids, and we have great schools for people of all races to come to and to learn, and safe neighborhoods for all people regardless of our race. So safety, education, home ownership, home opportunities where we can network with a variety of different people, not just people who are all just like ourselves. So those are all elements. It's complex, and it's going to require us all to have some patience and some love and work together. And it's something I'm really pleased that we're having this conversation and excited about the opportunities that are apparent right now.
Okay. Carolyn, we have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I just want to encourage our listeners to put their questions in the chat if they have questions that they'd like Carolyn to respond to. Kind of some closing thoughts for us.
Oh, golly. First of all, I want to thank you all for the work that you do. It is so important to keep people engaged in the political process. We're really seeing just historic times and not in a good way. So every time you hold one of these forums, every time you talk to a candidate, every time you push the options or the envelope on democracy, getting people involved, getting them voting, having these conversations, we are all better off. Democracy is the best system for protecting human rights in the world, and we need to bolster that. So everything that you do, I'm thankful for that. It's a crisis. That being said, I would love to be able to represent you on the city council. It's an opportunity to serve, and I am a Rotarian. We believe in service above self. This is something that's been my life, as service above self, and I would welcome the opportunity to be able to serve this beautiful city.
Great. Carolyn, can you remind our listeners where they can get additional information about you and your candidacy?
You betcha. I've got a website at www.carolyn4edina.com. And now I believe both versions work. Carolyn, the number 4 Edina, and Carolyn FOR, but go to Carolyn number 4 Edina.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carolyn Jackson 4cc. And I also have a Facebook page. So I'm on all over social media. I'd love to have your comments. If you'd like to email me, it's carolynforedina at gmail.com, but you can also reach me through the website. So carolynforedina.com, and thank you very much.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Carolyn. We appreciate your input, and as I've said to you before, thank you for running.
Well, you're welcome.
That's an important part of democracy too.
Well, thank you. Be well, everybody. It's lovely to see your names and to be in the room with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Karen.